Hi, friends, and welcome to Let's Talk About Healthcare, a podcast about the challenges and the opportunities, the good and the not so good, and the moments of joy found all across our healthcare system today. And remember, it's up to all of us to make healthcare work better for everyone, one day at a time. Hey friends, welcome to the next episode of Let's Talk About Healthcare. We've got Tammy Hawes joining us today from Virsys12 and couldn't be more thrilled for today's conversation. Her background and what she's doing in healthcare and her firm is beyond impressive. And for us to be able to share her stories and what her company's been doing, I'm incredibly excited to have her. So Tammy, first and foremost, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, David. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So at first, let's kick us off with a real easy one is just tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit about Virsys12 and the work that y'all do in healthcare.
I started the company in 2011, but that was after I had been in healthcare for many, many years in the IT area, healthcare IT. I graduated from college with a degree in computer science. I was a nerd and a really weird one at best because I was a woman as well. So I'd been a software developer for many years, seen the challenges in healthcare. At some point in my career, I had made it to the C-suite and I was responsible for the strategy of organizations and using technology to really accomplish the mission and the goals of the company. And it's just so hard in healthcare. And I thought there's got to be a better way. So I was introduced to the Salesforce platform and I said, this is it. This is a game changer for healthcare. There are some things that can be done in the Salesforce platform that can really transform healthcare. So that's what we did. We started Virsys12 in 2011 with the mission of transforming healthcare with Salesforce.
And talk us through. So when you think back to 2011 and when you first started, what were some of the initial types of projects that y'all took on, and how's that evolved over the next decade? Like when you think back to Salesforce, my gosh, this could really transform healthcare. What was the light bulb or the specific problem or the types of projects that you took on right in the early days?
That's a great question. And actually, we took on anything, anything anybody wanted to do where they wanted to automate back office processes and combine that with customer data, whether that customer data be patients or providers or members or even hospital contacts if it were software companies selling into healthcare systems. So we did a little bit of everything. And we started as a consulting company, what Salesforce calls a systems integrator as an SI. And then we saw this repeatable problem in the provider data space. And instead of, building that from scratch with every client, we said, there's an opportunity here to develop an application. So at that time, we decided to build an application, launch it on the Salesforce App Exchange, and become what's called an ISV. And the Salesforce App Exchange is a lot like the Apple App Store where you download apps. So it's the same type of concept, but just for enterprise business solutions. So we launched with, at the time, our product was called V12 ACO because we believed our market was going to be in the accountable care space. And it was, and it still is. But as we've grown and matured and we've seen the types of issues faced by payers and large health systems around provider network management, we rebranded the application to V12 Network a couple of years ago. And we also have a complementing product called V12 IPD for Intelligent Provider Directory. So we're really deep now into the provider data, provider directory, transparency space.
Talk a little bit about over the last 10 years, I'm assuming that what I'm thinking about is how has healthcare in general increased adoption of the Salesforce platform? Has that increased over the last decade from your understanding? Are more either accountable care organizations or health systems or any type of payer org are they using Salesforce more or to a different degree? And is that continuing to grow? Is the applicable market growing as you're solving problems that are directly related?
Yeah, I think that early on, we were still in a client server world, and cloud-based solutions in healthcare were not the norm. There was a lot of pushback in the early days on using cloud-based solutions for patient or provider data either, or any kind of data. And I think that that is transformed significantly uh, based on just need. I mean, you just can't operate nowadays without having a very robust, agile, flexible, fast solution. And patients, members, providers, everybody demands that they have access to their data and to their systems and to their contract and, to their benefits real time, online, every day, 24 hours a day.
So if we accelerate forward and then talk about provider data itself, right? Why does it matter in healthcare? Why is this a problem that you and your organization have been so focused on making it better? What are the pain points and the problems that it creates for healthcare organizations today?
So that's a very interesting question. And for us, it was very surprising when we realized that these really large organizations, whether they were an ACO, an integrated clinical network, a payer, health plan, a large health system, they all had a need to onboard a provider, know that that provider was affiliated with their organization, potentially do credentialing, keep the latest records of where they practice, what's their taxonomy, what are their certifications, what are their qualifications, what locations are they affiliated with, what are their IDs, their NPI, their medical state license numbers, etc. And that still, in a lot of organizations, is still done in either siloed data systems or through Excel or email, Word documents, or paper PDF applications faxed in. And that just won't cut it nowadays because there are so many processes that need to be in collaboration with other departments within the organization. And so having it in these siloed data systems without the ability to share and collaborate is a huge financial burden on all these organizations. They can't move as quickly. They can't move in a cost-effective manner to build and manage provider networks. And most of these organizations are trying to build and manage their provider networks to scale very, very quickly, both for just building a community of providers and then also to move into value-based care. So the old ways just won't work anymore, and in a way that's going to be scalable. So it's a real competitive advantage to organizations that see that the automation exists and they can make that transformation to have a collaborative platform to do those processes.
It makes a lot of sense. And so when we think about the context of, certainly there are problems all over the place in managing this data within healthcare, what have you perceived or what have you heard from your healthcare partners as being the effect on patients? And when provider data is bad, what does that actually result in from a patient experience perspective? And I know you work typically on one side and not the other, but I'm curious if you just have any initial top of the mind thoughts on what does this look like all the way downstream when it's inefficient upstream?
So we really believe that the provider data is at the core of the member getting great service. And that really boils down to knowing who's in network. And then that influences pricing transparency for the member. There's nothing more frustrating than going out, trying to find a provider that you want to go to in network and showing up and then they're not in network. And I think that's why you're seeing all of the government laws and regulations coming down the pike on pricing transparency. And it is not that the payers or the health systems want to prevent the patient from knowing It's that they can't. They don't have the systems in place to actually do it. So I think that's why we're so passionate about the technology we're bringing to market, because we're allowing solutions that are very flexible, agile, scalable, customizable, and that solve that problem, that eventually solve the problem for patients and members so that they can have real-time access to know what doctors are in network and what's it going to cost me to go and get this procedure, and who do I want to sign up with, what are these providers, what are their quality measurements, what what are their star ratings, how many likes do they have, the whole thing, the consumerism of the patient experience really is at the end of the line. But you have to have the back office processes and systems and the collaboration within your organization to be able to provide that.
I love that. And you touched on this briefly in your answer, is just, the pricing transparency rule. We know that the interoperability rule is slowly starting to take hold, and we're watching health systems change, albeit the change is slow. And so I'm curious what you think, with even just those two, interoperability and pricing transparency, what does that tell you about where healthcare is going broadly, right? So going to 40,000 feet for a second, what does that tell you about the way healthcare is changing and evolving?
Well, I think everybody's trying to get to the same goal and share data and make these processes seamless for patients and providers and the organizations that serve both. It's really been hard up until now, and it's still going to be hard to adhere to the interoperability rules that are coming down the pike. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a great thing for all parties involved. I think that for many years, even when we were moving from client server to cloud, there were people who said, we just can't do it. It's not possible. And there's people out there saying, hey, we can't do this. It's not possible. Well, everything is possible. It's hard, though, to go from one transition and one change to the next. But at the end of the day, if we can all see the goal at the end, and that is better patient care, better service to providers, it's a really good thing for the entire industry.
Absolutely. What about just the connection between provider data and interoperability? And there's been and the provider directory being the thing that I know so many payer organizations and health systems are trying to solve for, is how do we make provider directories somewhat universal, somewhat shareable? And we've heard everything from the buzziness of blockchain to just making sure that our internal processes are up to speed. I'm curious of what that category of provider data, just talk about that a little bit a second, and about how have you seen this change and evolve even in just over the last couple of years, of kind of what's buzzy, but what's also real, and what are you seeing happen, and how are payers tackling this problem? There's a lot of news about the problem, but I'm curious what you've seen actually work, right? How is this actually, what's been successful that you've seen? And certainly feel free to even highlight some of the work that Virsys12 has been doing. What are the success stories that you say, hey, this is, I'm holding up this way to tackle the problem because it's really working, as opposed to kind of what we hear in the news and what's buzzy in the industry?
So that's easy. And this will be a shameless plug for Virsys12, but we believe what we're doing is working. We believe that at the end of the day, there needs to be a single source of truth for the provider profile. It seems so easy, but it's so difficult. Just like think of general marketing, where you've got an email marketing list. People change, they get married, their name changes, they move addresses, they change phone numbers, they even change email addresses. That's at the basic front. Well, that happens with provider data too. And I think that, at a minimum, payers will update their provider directory when they go and they credential a provider, and maybe when they have the provider reattest. But that data is changing every single day. And the same thing occurs. They move locations, they get a new board specialty, they start practicing at a new location, terms change, everything changes about the provider. So we believe that you have to be proactive in your data maintenance. And it's great to have the provider contact you and say, hey, my data's changed. But we also believe that there are all kinds of data sources, claims, data from the government side, basic surveys, forms, internet, where you can take all that data and you can influence or decide, hey, this triggers a change. Maybe we need to reach out to the provider and say, hey, did you really just start practicing at this new location? And so that's why we created V12 Intelligent Provider Directory, is to basically be an engine that ingests all this data. You can model and you can stack and rank and say, hey, if it comes from this data source, maybe our claim system, we're going to rank that data a little bit higher than if we just pull it off the internet somewhere, off of Facebook. But the technology exists. What now has to happen is people have to adopt the technology, because the technology is phenomenal right now. It's the internal change management and the desire to say, we're going to solve this problem that, we're facing now.
I know a couple of years ago, CMS started the process of auditing plans for directory accuracy, and I know certainly you have been paying attention to those, as have I, and it's been fascinating to see, just even with the added emphasis from CMS, how little progress has been made. If you look back at those audits, which wrapped up a year or so ago, and I'm curious of is there a missing piece in the equation from your perspective of enforcement of I know CMS has said and has issued guidance around sort of why it's so critical to have accurate provider directories. Certainly we know why, but also is there a missing component to that? And when we think about healthcare trends in the past, sometimes enforcement drives adoption. I'm curious of what your perspective is as it relates to the directory accuracy. Is enforcement needed to drive adoption in this case, or is it being adopted sort of alongside of that? And I'm curious what you would say.
So I've been in healthcare a long time, and I have seen that enforcement drives adoption, but financial rewards also drive adoption. So I'm not really a big proponent of, the beating people over the head with the club. I'm more of a carrot person, where if you can show organizations that they can save money by adopting this new technology, they can have happier members and patients, they can build better networks, they can have happier providers, they can have happier employees. No employee likes to go through this really cumbersome process of doing their job every day repetitively over and over when it can be automated. So we've been able to show, like specifically with one customer, a $14 million savings in their process over a 12-month period. I find that speaks.
That's amazing. I mean, that's an amazing savings.
And then that's just overhead savings. That's not the additional revenue that you might generate for your business that then can be turned back into better patient care and more proactive outreach to your members and your providers that even provide more benefits to the entire healthcare community. So, those are the unmeasurables at this point, but that's the way we try to go about it.
All right, Tammy. So how about this? What's the relationship that you perceive between provider networks and compliance and staying up to date with all current regulation?
Well, you can't have one without the other, and there is no way to build and manage a provider network without making sure that these providers are in compliance. And that is where and why we developed our API between our system and Provider Trust, because of the great work that you guys are doing on these exclusions. And again, that is a process that needs to be real time. And I find that, we partnered with you guys because we feel that you have the best solution out there in the market, and we want to partner with the best. So, as our clients are going through the process of onboarding providers into the network and going through the credentialing, that add-on, that plug-in that we have that pings out to your system is just crucial. So kudos to Provider Trust for all the great work you guys are doing in this space as well.
Question for you. Virsys12 and you yourself, you've accomplished so much in the last decade and have advanced healthcare forward in so many different ways. I'm curious what you're most proud of. If you think about that last decade of growth for Virsys12 and bringing new products to market and helping payers just streamline their network operations, what are the things that stick out when you reflect back over the last decade that you're most proud of?
So proud is not a real word in my vocabulary. I don't like do proud very well. Yeah, I because I think we're always not doing enough in any regard. We need to be doing more. That's probably a flaw of mine. But if I had to pick something I'm proud about, it would really be the team. We just have a phenomenal team that has gone through all kinds of ups and downs, in our business, which is true with any business. And they're just phenomenal people. And they're also phenomenal technologists and consultants. And I'm really proud when I hear our customers talk about what a great job we're doing as a company. And that's really what drives me every day.
That's awesome. Thinking into the future, what excites you about the future, either of healthcare or of Virsys12? What's most exciting to you when you gaze into the crystal ball and look out to the next decade of healthcare experience? What's the thing that's most exciting to you?
Well, I do believe that what we've all been through the last year with COVID has really pushed forward some of the technology initiatives much faster than maybe they would have been. The phrase, there's no change without pain. And I think we've all experienced a lot of pain this last year. And I'm really excited about that because I believe that the technology is not holding us back anymore. It's people. And so I'm loving what I'm seeing and hearing as far as people's willingness to go through the change that they need to really transform healthcare. And that's in every regard, whether it be telehealth or proactive member and patient engagement and outreach or provider network management.
Awesome. And Tammy, we've just got two more questions for you today and wanted to take this moment and just say we so appreciate you joining us. The one, just along the lines of what you were just saying, is if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about healthcare, what's the one thing you would change today? And I know that there's so much to choose from, but what's the thing you would change?
So I spoke about this a little bit earlier. I think that healthcare is hard. And so it's easy to stand behind security and government regulation and say, we can't do that. We can't do that because of whatever law or because of HIPAA or because of whatever. And that's really rarely the case. There's always a transformational way you can impact your organization with technology and still work within the bounds of the law or the security requirements. And I'd love to wave a magic wand and have that attitude go away and have more of a can-do attitude in healthcare. And I believe we're starting to see that. But yeah, that would be the magic wand. Wave that magic wand and remove negativity.
Amazing. And then last question for you is we ask everybody this. It's just, what are you currently reading? What's on your bookshelf? What's been inspiring you lately? And that can be as simple as something you're reading, or it can be as broad as something else. But what's been inspiring you lately?
So I have some oldies but goodies that I pull off the shelf from time to time. And typically I'm doing Audible and just doing, listening to it. But I've read before the book Principles by Ray Dalio, and I'm reading it again. There's just so many great nuggets about life and running business and motivating teams. And I think that's a classic.
Awesome. Tammy, thank you. This has been just so enlightening and so incredible. For those listening in, please follow along with Virsys12. They're doing incredible work in healthcare just to make sure we stay connected and make sure that we ultimately that we deliver a great provider experience that translates to a good patient experience and just keep healthcare more connected. So Tammy, this has been incredible. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, David. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Let's Talk About Healthcare. Remember, it's up to all of us to make healthcare work better for everyone, one day at a time. Catch you next time.